So here I have a simple game of Pong. So I click to start, and the goal is to get rid of all the bricks. This game is better than Fortnite. So the ball is getting faster now after I've destroyed a lot of the bricks, because every time it breaks a brick, it gets a little bit faster. Okay, just 2 more bricks to go. 1 more. Dude, come on. Come on, it's right there. Just get it. Dude, no, come on. There, I win. So here's all the blocks for it. It's just a little Pong game. So yeah, now it's time to make the HD renovation. So I'm going to create a new project. I'm just going to call it Pong. I'm going to set the render to compatibility. Okay, so create a 2D scene. We can just call this Pong. And I'm going to do the project settings. So set the boot splash, turn off show image, set the background color to black, and the window, set the mode to canvas items. So I'm going to start by making the gradient background. Just create a canvas layer, call it background, create a texture rect, make it full screen, set the texture to gradient 2D. I'm going to copy the colors right from my project, so I'm just going to get the hex code right here, and I'm going to paste it into there. And now for the right side, I'm going to copy the other color, and then set the direction to x0, y1. Okay, and now I'm going to lock it. So there's the background. I'm going to hit play, select current, and now this is what we have right here. Okay, so first thing I want to do is create the bricks. So I'm going to add a sprite 2D. I'm going to call it brick. I'm going to set the texture to gradient texture 2D. Here it is. I forgot to set the background layer, set it to -128. There you go. Now for the brick, I'm just going to set the gradient to, let's see, what this, I'm just going to set it to this blue color for now. So on the left, I'm just going to set it to blue color. And on the right, I'm going to set it to blue. Alright, so hit play. There's the brick just up there. So I need to find the width and height for this brick. So in the Scratch project, as you can see, there's 5 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to want to set the width of this to like the width of the screen divided by 5. So I'm going to go to project settings and get the width of the screen. And now for the width of the texture, I'm going to set it to that divided by 5. And for the height, I can just set it to whatever, like 30, 35 maybe. I think that's good. And I'm going to go to offset and turn off centered. So now it's perfectly in the top left corner. If I hit play, then there's the brick right there. So now I want to create several bricks across the screen. So in Scratch, I'm doing that by setting up the clones. So basically what this does, it just creates a bunch of clones. So it will start out by going up here and right there. Okay, and then it's going to create a clone, and then it's going to change its X position, create another clone, and then it's just going to repeat this 5 times until it goes across the whole screen. So once it reaches the side, then it goes down here, and then it starts the process again. So that's how the clones get created in Scratch over here. So in Godot, I can kind of make a clone by turning this into an instance. So if I right click it Save branch as seen, I can just call it brick. Now click this little icon, it's going to open the brick scene. And now go back to the Pong scene and just delete the brick from there, because now I have it saved over here as an instance. Okay, so now that I have that, I can just create a bunch of them. I'm going to make a node 2D. I'm going to call it bricks. Okay, so I'm going to add some behavior to that. So I'm going to create a new folder called scripts. And I'm going to select the brick node and attach a script to it. I'm going to put it into the scripts folder. I'm going to call it generate bricks. Okay, so on the ready function, first I want to define the brick clone. So I'm going to select the brick here. I'm going to drag it in while holding the control key, and it's going to create a constant variable for me. So I can say variable new brick sprite 2D equals brick dot instantiate, and now I can say add child new brick. So I'm going to hit play, and then the brick gets added there. Cool, so now I can create a bunch of them. So I'm going to do what I did in Scratch and go across the screen. So I'm going to do this by making a for loop. So for I in range 5, because there's 5 columns. So that's what I'm going to do. But every time it adds the child, I want it to move. So I'm going to create some variables. So spawn x is 0.0 because it's going to be a float. And then spawn y is also 0.0. So after creating the brick, I can say new brick dot position equals vector2 spawn x spawn y. So that's going to set its position to whatever this is. So after adding the child, I'm going to change the spawn x by how much? The width of this, which would be 230. So I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to say spawn x plus equals 230. Make sure to put 0.0. So hit play, and it spawns bricks across the whole top of the screen. So I noticed that there's a little gap here on the right side of the screen. I suspect that to be a rounding error. So if I get the viewport width and divide it by 5, you can see it's actually 230.4. So I'm going to change this to 230.4. And now it's evenly distributed across the top. Okay, so now I'm going to change the size of the brick so that there's some spacing between them. So if I select the brick and then change the size down, as you notice, it's staying in the top left corner. So that will create kind of something like that, which I don't want. So I'm going to go back to the offset and turn on centered. But now if I hit play, now the bricks are like that. So I want to set the spawn x to half. So 230 divided by 2 is 115. So set it to that. And the height of the brick is 35. So 35 divided by 2 is 17.5. I'm probably going to change these numbers later, but it's just for now. So if I hit play, there we go. Now I can change the size of the bricks. So let's say like 225 or like 220. There, now it has some spacing between each brick. So maybe I'm going to make it a little bigger, like 223. Okay, that seems good. And now I want to change this number again. I'm going to push it down by like, I don't know, 20. Whoops, I'm just guessing random values until I get it right. It's just a bunch of trial and error. 25, I think maybe 23. Okay, I'm going to set it at 24, and that should be good. All right. So now I want to move the bricks down. So, whoops, in Scratch, I was doing that by setting the X back and then changing the Y. So, I'm going to create another for loop outside of this. I'm just going to call it for I in range 6 because there's 6 rows. So I'm also going to change this to J so that it doesn't give me an error. Alright, so now I can say spawn X equals 115. And by the way, if this was like a bigger project, you wouldn't want to like hard code these values. You would probably want to like define these numbers. But since this is just a small project, I'm not really worried about it for now. So spawn Y, I guess minus equals, wait, no, 35, maybe 38, I don't know. Okay, it's going the wrong direction. I often forget that in Godot, the Y value goes down. The Y value gets bigger as you go down the screen. Okay, so I'm going to just make this number bigger, like 40, maybe like 43. Okay, I think these bricks are in a good position. So now I want to change the color of the bricks, because in Scratch it starts as blue and then it changes colors down to red. So in Scratch, basically for every row we're switching the costume, and each costume here has a different color for it. Now in Godot, I'm using a sprite 2D, and I don't feel like updating the texture for every one. So there's actually a trick that you can do. So I'm going to set the gradient to white for both of these. And at the bottom, if I go to visibility, there's a property called modulate. And here, I can change the color to whatever I want. So for each row, I'm just going to change the modulate to what color I want to be. So in Scratch, we have a list of costumes for it. But in Godot, I can just create a list. So I can call it, I'm going to make it a constant. I'm going to call it brick colors. I'm going to make it an array. So the first value, I'm going to make it the color of this blue brick. So I'm going to select the hex code, and I'm going to make it just a string right there. And I'm going to copy the blue color, and I'm going to create another one, and I'm just going to do that for every color. Okay, so now I have all of the colors here. Okay, so now I'm actually going to get rid of the underscore here because I'm going to use the I variable. So after creating the brick, I can say new brick dot modulate equals color, and I can just say brick colors I. So that's going to choose it's going to choose the current row, and it's going to get the brick color from that list. So if I hit play, now we have all the brick colors there. Now that we have the bricks, it's time to add the paddle and the ball. So I'm going to create a sprite 2D. I'm going to create a new gradient texture. I'm just going to set both sides to white. So this is going to be the paddle. So I'm just going to like stretch it out to like whatever size I want. Maybe that. Okay, and I'm just going to call it paddle. So now I'm going to set the position to the center of the screen by getting the width, and set the transform to that divided by 2. I'm just going to hold shift to drag it right there. So let's see, is that a good paddle? Maybe I'll make it a little smaller. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to make it like a little smaller, a little taller. So there's the paddle. And I want to make it move with the mouse. So I'm going to attach a new script to it. I'm just going to call it paddle. So this is quite simple. All I have to do is just say position.x equals get global mouse position.x. I'm going to put an underscore for delta because I'm not using it. So now the paddle follows the mouse. Okay, so in Scratch, as you can see, it says click to start, and once I click, then the paddle starts moving with the mouse. So I'm going to make the text saying that. So I'm going to make a canvas layer, call it GUI, and I'm going to add a label to it, make it full screen, and just type in click to start. Set the alignment to center. Now I'm just going to drag it down to wherever, and then set the font size to big. Now hit play, and it says click to start right there. Okay, maybe I'll make it a little smaller. Move it down a little. Okay, so I'm just going to call this text, sure, and I'm going to attach a script to it. I don't really know what to call this. I'm just going to keep it as text. Alright, so first I'm going to add an input for clicking. So I'm going to go to input map and add a new action called click. Click the plus button. I'm going to choose left mouse button. So I can create a function input. I can say if event.is action pressed click, then I can print clicked. So I'm going to hit play, and every time I click, it's going to print clicked. Okay, so once it clicks, I want to start the round. What I'm going to do is create a global script for that, so I can have like global variables. So I'm going to create a new script. I'm just going to call it global. Okay, click on it. Just get rid of this. I'm now going to create a variable called game started. Set it to false. So I'm going to make it global by going to project settings, auto load, and selecting the global script, and then clicking add. So now in the text, I can say global.game_started equals true. And I'm also going to make the text go away, so visible equals false. So now I'm going to make the paddle only move when the game is started. So I'm going to say if global.game_started equals true. Hit play, and now it says click to start. Once I click, then the paddle will move. So now that we've got that, it's time to create the ball. So I'm just going to duplicate the paddle, but detach the script from it. I'm going to call it ball. So move it, lock the text so you don't drag it like that. Okay, so I'm just going to select the ball and move it up a little. So right click on the texture and click Make Unique Recursive. So now we have a new gradient to work with. Okay, I'm going to go to the transform and reset the scale. Okay, so I can create a circle texture with the gradient. So what I have to do is, where is it? Okay, set the fill to radial. Now click on the right thing and set the alpha to 0. So now it creates kind of like that. Okay, so turn on the grid and set this to the center. And for the interpolation, set this to constant. And now just take this and drag it to wherever it makes a circle. Okay, so as you can see, the ball is kind of pixelated. So I'm going to set the fill back to linear. Whoops. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, no, set this to radial. Keep that as radial. Just set this to linear. That's what I meant to do. Okay, and then you take this and drag it until it doesn't look pixelated, but you don't want to make it too fuzzy. So there's the ball. So I can hold Alt and Shift to make it whatever size I think is good. Okay, I think that's a good size. I'm just going to keep it right there. So there's the ball. Okay, so I want to add some movement to this ball. So attach a script to it. Call it ball.gd. Okay. So first things first, in the ball, when the green flag is clicked, it points into a random direction. It points in that direction. So it's actually really simple to put here. All I have to do is just say rotation degrees equals random int in range from -60 to 60. And that's all I have to do. So if I hit play, you can't really see it, but if I change the texture of the ball to like this, now you can see it is pointing in a random direction every time. Okay, so the way that it's pointing is where the ball is going to go. So now how am I going to move the ball? Well, in Scratch, I'm moving the position of the ball, but in Godot, we actually have built-in physics. So in Scratch, the physics are kind of janky. As you can see, the ball, it kind of goes through the bricks a little bit. The collisions are nowhere near good. In fact, I think if I drag the side of the paddle to it, I don't know. But the physics, as you can see, I'm having to put this here, push it out of the paddle. I'm having to broadcast hit the brick. The brick has to detect it, and then I go back and move the ball, and then do another broadcast. So yeah, Scratch is really janky when it comes to making stuff with physics. But Godot has its own physics. So I'm going to actually turn the ball into a physics object. So I'm going to add a character body 2D. Okay, and I'm going to select the ball. I'm going to change this to texture. And I'm going to select the character body 2D and change this to the ball. So first I want to set the position. So I'm just going to copy the position of the texture and then set the kinematic body to that. So copy the X and Y. Okay, and now select the texture and reset the position, and then just drag the texture into the character body. Okay, it didn't update for some reason, but no, reset the position to 0. Okay, so now the ball is now a character body 2D. So I'm going to detach the script from the texture, and I'm going to attach the script onto the character body, and I'm going to change this extends to character body 2D. So now everything functions the same way, except we converted the ball into a character body 2D. Okay, so now I can add some movement to it. So a function called physics process. So first I want to create a variable for the speed. Set it to like, I don't know, 300, 200. Yeah. So in the physics process, I can just say move and collide by velocity. Velocity is basically like a built-in thing for the character body. So after setting the rotation, I'm going to set the velocity to, what is it? All right, get ready because this is complicated. You set the velocity to vector 2, 0, -1 dot rotation times speed. There. Okay, so when I click play, ooh, that ball is going pretty fast. Make sure to set this to velocity times delta. That's what I forgot to do. So click play, and the ball is moving in the direction that it's facing. That's nice. But it goes through the bricks. So I want to add some collision to the bricks. So go over here to the brick and add in a static body 2D. You can call it brick collision. Now add in a collision shape 2D and set the shape to rectangle. And now just set it to like about the size of the brick. It's a little bit bigger than it, but that's fine. And now I'm going to right click on the brick collision and say make scene root. So now the brick is a static body, and I can set this to texture. Now before I hit play, there's one thing I gotta go change. In the generate bricks, I'm going to change this to static body 2D. Or actually, better, I can just put node. So if I ever change it, I don't have to worry about this script anymore. Anyways, hit play, and okay, I forgot to add collision to the ball. So select the ball, select the collision shape 2D, and set it to circle shape, and I'll just set it to the ball. Okay, I was confused for a second, but yeah, you gotta remember to add some collision to the ball. So now the ball will hit the bricks and it just stops there. Yep. Okay, so how do I make the ball bounce? So in Scratch, I had to customize that by when it touches the bricks, it points in 180 minus direction. I guess I could do that in Godot, but Godot has its own little bounce function that you can use. So this move and collide function actually returns something. So I can say variable collision, it's a kinematic collision 2D, and it equals the move and collide. So I can say if collision, then velocity equals velocity dot bounce collision dot get normal. So if I hit play, the ball will now bounce off of the bricks. Boing. And boing. Okay. So I'm going to also make it bounce off the paddle. So click on the paddle and create a static body 2D. I'm going to call it paddle collision. I'm just going to create a collision shape. So I'm just going to keep the paddle. I'm just going to keep it as the texture as the parent because I don't feel like changing it right now. But yeah, just set the collision shape to about that, and it should work now. So if I hit play, whoops. Okay, the ball will now bounce off of the paddle. Okay, and let me just make the speed a little faster. Okay, so that wouldn't be fun to play because if I play the Scratch project, as you can see, every time the ball hits the paddle, it actually bounces in a random direction. So that can lead to some variation in gameplay. So yeah, the ball actually bounces randomly off of the paddle, and you can see it's actually just pointing in the random direction again. So what I'm going to do is create a function for that. I'm just going to say random direction, and I'm just going to copy this, copy this, and then paste it into here. So on the ready, I can just call the random direction function. So I want to also do the random direction whenever I bounce off of the paddle. So there's actually a way to detect what you bounced off of in Godot. So in Scratch, you can't do that really, but in Godot, it will tell you what you bounced off of. So it will tell you, did you bounce off the brick? Did you bounce off the side of the edge of the screen? So it's really useful. So I can say collider object equals collision dot get collider. Okay, so I'm just going to print collider. So if I hit play, the ball bounces off the brick and then the paddle. So when it bounces off the brick, it prints static body, but when it bounces off the paddle, it prints paddle collision. So I can say if collider.name equals paddle collision, then random direction. So now, yep, the ball bounces off into a random direction every time it touches the paddle. Okay, if I can get it to a good, yeah, come on. Yeah, so there, you can see it there. It bounces off into a random direction. Okay, so I think I'm finally going to make it the edges of the screen bounce off because it's not bouncing off the sides of the screen. So just create a node 2D. We can call it edge. Actually, no. I'm going to make this a static body 2D, not a node 2D. So just call this edge. And now add in a collision shape 2D. Set the shape to world boundary. Okay, set the normal to Y1. So that makes it bounce off the top of the screen. Okay, now create another one. Right click it and click on make unique. You have to do that. So set the normal to X1, Y0. So now it can bounce off the left side of the screen. Create a new one. Right click it, make unique. And then set the normal to X -1. So this will make the right side of the screen. But you have to set the position of it to over here. So get the viewport width and then set the position of this to there. And I'm not going to make one for the bottom of the screen because we don't really need it. So hit play, and if I can get the ball to go to the side of the screen, yep, it now bounces off the edge. And the left side too. Whatever, you get the point. So yeah. So now I'm going to make it delete the bricks whenever it hits the brick. So a lot of you might think that Godot is more complicated than Scratch. But this is one case where Godot is a lot more simple than Scratch. Because, yeah, in Scratch I'm having to do all these broadcast messages. But in Godot, all I have to do is just say else collider.queue_free. That's all I have to do. So hit play, and now the ball will destroy the bricks whenever it hits it. Incredible. So let me try that again. Also, you may have noticed that the ball will just go right away. So in the physics project, just also add if global dot game started equals true. Okay, so now the ball will wait until you click. Okay, so there's actually a bug right now that you might not be able to see. Let me see if I can. Yeah, look, watch this. So as you can see, the ball just went past the screen there, and that's because the ball is also destroying the boundaries. All right, so I can also just going to say elif, which means else if, not collider.name equals edge. So now it's not going to destroy the edge of the screen. I can't really show it. Let me try to show it. Okay, so there it just hit the right side of the screen. And if we watch it go, yep, it can still bounce off the right. So we fixed it, and now I'm going to add some sounds. So I'm going to create a new folder called audio. Okay, so I'm just going to get the sound right from here, and then I'm going to drag it into here. Okay, so I'm going to select the ball. I'm going to add in a stream player, and I'm going to call it break, because this sound will play whenever it breaks a brick. So I'm going to drag in the sound. Okay, that's pretty loud. -28, that's good. Okay, so there's the break sound. And now, after it destroys the brick, I'm just going to say break.play. So now it's going to play a sound whenever it hits the bricks. Okay, now I'm going to add the game over in windscreen. So in here, if the ball ever goes too far down, it says you lose. Okay, so first I want to see where the kill zone would be. So select the ball. Let me just lock these real quick so I can't select them. So drag the ball down to like right here. Let's see, 610. So that's what I'm going to do. So down here in this block, I'm going to say if position.y greater than or equal to 610.0, then global.gameStarted equals false. So click play. Once the ball goes down, then everything stops. So in Scratch, we were broadcasting game over. So in Godot, I'm going to create, in the global script, I'm going to create a signal called game over. And instead of just setting the game starter to false, I'm going to say global.emit signal game over. And in the text script, I'm going to add a function for that on game over. I'm not going to do anything yet. I'm just going to go ahead and connect it. So on the ready function, I can say global.gameover.connect on game over. So when the game ends, here I'm going to set the game started to false. And I'm also going to make the text visible. I'm going to set the text to you lose. So I'll hit play. Now let's let the ball go past the screen. There, and it says you lose. Now there's actually a bug. So once I click the screen, as you can see, the ball moves a little bit. So that has something to do with the physics process. So to fix it, what I'm going to do is just create a variable called clicked, set it to false. So once we click, we're going to say if clicked equals false, then set clicked to true. So now that bug, set this to a double equal sign. That's a common mistake I make. You got to make sure this has to be a double equal sign. So hit play, and once the ball goes down, you lose. And once I click, the ball doesn't move anymore. Okay, so just one more thing to add and we're done. I have to add the win screen. So once all the bricks get destroyed, then it will say you win. And the way that happens is that you select the brick. Yeah, so whenever the brick gets deleted, it changes the brick count by -1. And once the brick count is 0, then it says win. And the brick count is just whenever it creates a brick, it will change the brick count by 1. Okay, so let me add that. So I'm going to go to global, and I'm going to say create a variable called brick count, set it to 0. In the generate brick script, whenever it creates a brick, I'm going to say global.brickCount plus equals 1. And in the ball script, after it destroys one of the bricks, you can say global.brickCount minus equals 1. I'm actually going to put the sound before that. I'm going to say if global.brickCount equals 0, then do what? We're going to create a new signal called game win. Okay, I'm just going to say global.emit signal game win. Also, you can make this less than or equal to 0 because that's just a little better. So in the text, I'm going to create a function for on game win. We're just going to set the text to you win, and I'm going to connect it. So global.game win connect on game win. Okay, I lied. There's actually one more thing to add. I completely forgot, but in the ball, you're going to once it creates a brick, you just change the speed by 20. Okay, and now we're done. So I'm going to play this in full screen. So go to project settings, set it to exclusive full screen to get the full 180p experience. Well, technically not. Anyways, so I'm just going to break all of these bricks. And the ball is now getting faster every time it breaks one of them. And my favorite thing about this is how the collisions are much more accurate, and we didn't even have to program any of the physics. All we had to do was just tell it what physics to do. So we could just say bounce. We could just tell it to collide with this. And that's all you have to do. In Scratch, you would have to program what bounce means. You would have to program how it collides with stuff. But in Godot, it's super simple to make physics. Now, the physics in Godot are not completely accurate, but there are add-ons you can add, like jolt physics or something, which will make the physics better. Okay, I'm trying to get this one brick. There, it says you win. So I hope you learned something, and thanks for watching me create this Pong game.